Please. Hello. I think I've put a whole lot together for you, so I'm going to breeze through it to hopefully make time. So just a little thing about Australia. It's 26 million people. It's quite a new country in the terms of European and the Americas, only being, invaded, as one would say, in 1788, and we've only just started recognising our Indigenous culture. So we're quite young. The number of architects in Australia is 14, I think registered 12,000, and there's 40 institutions that teach architecture there. So I guess I'm a practicing architect, and that has taken up my life of 25 years. I have 4 boys, teenage boys, 16 to 25. So I've been doing houses and so forth. I'll keep going through lovely residents like that. And in stadiums. And it's really quite interesting, the stadium influence on my life, because that has brought with boys play and sport. And Australia culturally is defined by sport. So trying to bring architecture through play and into that has been quite interesting. And also we're hosting the Olympics in 2032. And I had to present a paper to a sports commission with India there, because they're hosting it in 2036, and the difference between, we've got an ageing population and they've got a early, young population, and the difference in play and about cultural identity between the two. Oops. So we're also multicultural, and the Indigenous population is very, very small, and we're just starting to learn our stories. We also are a country of climate change, and we experience fire, bushfires, coastal erosion, because all of our cities are built along the coast, and also flooding. So resilience and resilient housing is very important to us. And there's been this whole thing since probably COVID, 2019, big bushfires, about partnerships between insurers, architects, and also banks that have started leading the way for the importance of what architecture leads. Our housing affordability is really, really difficult too, so that's a thing that faces our youth. I'll just go back. Yeah, and it's also that we've had a really inconsistent government for 20 years. We've had changes over every 2 or 3 years, so we've got a very inconsistent leadership role and very lacking of nation thought. So this is sort of the journey I've had in Australia. Starting from our whole thing in Western Australia, bringing through the Lego and having a collaborative thing with children, bringing it into the architects of WA, which is like only 1,000 of them, and then we also gifted it to the museum, the art gallery there, then that toured around regionally and into Indigenous communities. So here's some quick photos of that. 2010, Out of the Box festival happens every 3 years in Australia, and it's dedicated to children. The year after this, it flooded, and we had 2 years, and it was about the river and about why you bring, European civilization built around rivers. So we brought together photographs of what iconically happens, because the city had flooded for, I think, 5 times 100 years before, and it hadn't flooded until 1974, and people had forgotten. And then this happened. So that was a program. So it was small stuff, big stuff. And it was employing a kite maker as well to do it. Sculpture by the Sea. This is a cultural appropriation of how we've started having art exhibitions. I don't want to say that we're culturally poor in Australia. We like to think we do lead. But I just want to say that we are, coming along. This was a really interesting project for me, because it was about being commissioned to do poppies and doing them differently and engaging children. This project took on a life of its own. It went internationally, and it also became part of a movement that created an International Day for Service Animals. It was the first time the purple poppy had been sort of recognised globally for animals, service animals. And then it ended up, this is sort of what happened, we had the children make them, write messages, and it was also about cultural legacy and about the importance of how that is kept, and how do you align different institutions, and quite difficult ones around military and so forth, to come together to deliver with children, a minority, to have a voice that carries. And it was really interesting. I know this is not architecture, but the poppies originated, the first ones were actually done by French orphans out of the World War One. They raised money, and then the red poppies became known from the British Legion, and then they took over, and it was about raising money for men and then raising money for families. And the children got forgotten in that whole point of it. So this is in Pozières in France, which is the first war memorial for animals. And then it went through the city of Brisbane and on cliffs. So we had over, this is a 40-metre mural of all poppies, and it dropped 20 metres down, so it's quite huge. Involved 5,000 children. Within the libraries, the state libraries, we ran workshops, and this was also about housing and coming back to home and about the rights to housing. I'm just going to flick through this because I'm going to get time soon. So this was actually making children making the form and using recycling milk cartons and vacuum forming them and raising resin and putting acetate in them. And it was talking about collective memories. What is your home? What does that mean? And about, capturing a memory, an imagination. And then they became building blocks. This was 2022, and we started in Australia, putting out climate smart living guidelines home. And the local council got me along to start bringing children along to start understanding that process. So we ran these workshops that talked about building resilient homes. How do you bring it up? How do you involve the environment? And it was quite fascinating about how they actually have very limited knowledge, as we know, about those things, because we are having a whole society teach us that you need to have energy and not to think about how our grandparents and so forth use resources in a very scarce nature. We also then did a housing, because this was about housing crisis and with children, getting them to come together. So it was an active citizen workshop. And Logan City is one of the most diverse, multicultural and islander-based, so Pacific Island-based communities. We have a lot of domestic violence within those communities, as we do generally in all communities. And the whole safe city, they're still talking about safe cities. What was interesting about this whole thing, so we had these questions that you could choose, the children could choose, and I'll let you read them, I don't need to go through them. And then they had to choose what you could use, like tools. And then design tactics. So they worked together as teams to try and resolve the question and put that together. And then they presented them. And we used these to go back to council, back to the local municipality, and got them to actually say, hey, this area is working, this area isn't working, this space is unsafe. And what it did unveil was that these pathways the kids were taking on their bikes or the skateboards actually needed security or were safe. And they actually started implementing veggie gardens in spaces or putting in more lighting due to the voices of children. And then it brought up these other key words, which was ownership, sustainability, energy, and community. And these are some of the other words that came up, but it was all coming back to safe homes. Shared values, love, respect, healthy environments. Along my journey, so this is only recently, I've started talking to finance groups and also about economic empowerment of women. And this has been interesting about how do you turn built environment education into finance words, and how do you turn it into insurance words. And this is how I've started doing that. Talking about active citizenship, because they're parents, sustainable development goals, social value, well-being and architecture in the built environment. Where is the social? And then we talk about the UIA and how we at Kuala Lumpur, we put through a thing about health and well-being, important. Trying to teach the public that. Investment in money is needed, inclusive design and intergenerational living, new livability standards, master planning, and everyone working together. Resilience and future-proofing, weather events, climate change, energy use, toxic materials, food, life cycle, and plants. I gave these women takeaway tools. So it was like, what can you do at home? And they were really simple things. And energy actions, what can you do at home to save you money? This started ringing a bell. Community actions, how you can be a community thing. So it's sort of moving from talking to children about how that starts implementing corporates. So building happy, stronger people, communities through leadership and agency. So I just really want to show you this last one, and this is the last bit. The Australian Museum has started putting this, they've put this together, and this was October, just recently, and just closed. It's supposed to be touring Australia-wide, and it's 3 dioramas of a smart city, a resilient home, and futures, and about climate change. So the clever home, smart town, caring for country. And the caring for country was starting to talk about our Indigenous culture using burning methods to keep, bushfire down, and reseeding and soil regeneration, and working towards seaweed and water management. The rest we all know. Also about the importance of insulation. Our housing stock that we have in Australia has been just simple timber cladded buildings with corrugated iron. We haven't had the need for insulation, so builders there are just learning the importance of insulation. And we've just had those energy codes put in, as we were all complaining about, and as practitioners, how that all works. So this is what they put forward. This is the Australian Museum's simple thing they've been teaching the public. It's not rocket science, but it's quite interesting how a museum does it without any engagement with architects, because that's Australia. So I guess that's my story, but I think we've got a long way, and I'm very thankful I'm here, Mina, and I think that it's been quite inspirational from everyone who's been speaking here about the importance of cultural identity and embedment in society, and about sustainable development goals and active citizenship, and also about how we can change that discussion into a financial, economic empowerment of the public.
Thank you very much.